So, hello and welcome to a Savera UK Youth interview with the newly elected Police and Crime Commissioner for Liverpool, and that is Emily Spurrell. Thank you so much for being here today, Emily. Our first question for you is so the questions tonight are mostly going to be centred around your recent appointment and how you plan on supporting the work of Savera, and also how you plan on tackling the issue of violence against women and girls. So our first question for you here tonight is, why do you think it's important to speak out about harmful practices?
Okay, well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me. It's an issue that is very kind of dear to my heart, really, and tackling violence against women is going to be a key priority for me. So I really welcome the opportunity to talk to you a bit more about it. In terms of speaking out about harmful practices, this is a real challenge, I think, when we talk about tackling violence against women and girls. It's traditionally quite hidden, happens behind closed doors, and I think this is why it's really important that we do talk about it so much more, to really highlight the fact that there's probably a lot more happening that we don't know about. National research suggests only 5% of these crimes are ever reported, which obviously leaves a huge scope for abuse and violence that might be happening that we don't know about, and we really need to do something about. So, you know, it's sometimes badged as this kind of so-called honor-based abuse, and I think sometimes that suggests that it's, you know, it's hidden away within a culture and we don't understand it. But I think it's important that we're clear that where it's a crime, and we need to take action. So I think speaking out about it, you know, both from people within those communities as well as those of us who aren't, it is really important that we talk about it and make it clear that actually if it's criminal, then we take action, and violence and abuse against women and girls is just not accepted.
This is the second question. So why is it important for the Merseyside Police and Crime Commissioner to invest in victim care services like Savera UK?
So as the police commissioner, I commission a number of different services to support victims of crime. So things like hate crime, domestic abuse, sexual violence. And actually what is really important when I look at commissioning those services to provide that support for victims is that we make sure there is a spread of really targeted and specialist support, because if you've been a victim of a burglary, say, you might need a very different type of support than if you've been a victim of honour-based abuse or forced marriage or FGM. So I think it's really important to me that when I commission those services like Savera have a really good understanding of the experiences that these victims will have been through, and the type of support they might need, the wider cultural issues that might be surrounding that, and actually they really understand what support needs to be put in place to actually protect these people moving forward. So I think that's why, for me as police commissioner, when I talk about investing in victim services, it's really important to acknowledge the need for real specialist support for victims of harmful practices.
Perfect, thank you. Does the demographic makeup of Liverpool mean that more investment needs to be made to victim care centres, care services like Savera?
So I think in terms of the makeup of Liverpool, and I think in terms of victim services across the board, there is a huge demand for support. You know, unfortunately, particularly with COVID and over the last few years, we have seen a rise in crimes like this, and there just isn't the resource there needed. So one of the things that I want to do as police commissioner is to lobby the government and tell them that they need to give us more funding. We have lots of challenges in Merseyside, not just around harmful practices, but when you look at the levels of austerity and some of the other challenges that we face, it all links to this culture of violence and abuse. So I really want to make the case to government that they need to give us more funding so we have the right resource to put in place so victims of harmful practices actually get the support they need when they need it.
What work are you and you will be doing to minimize the risk of violence in the community in your care? And do you think that it's enough?
It's definitely not enough yet. You know, there's always more work that we need to do. There is a really strong partnership approach, I think, here on Merseyside. So working with organisations like Savera and other members of the local communities. There's also a really good partnership with our health, people who work in hospitals, people who work in our doctors' surgery practices, as well as with the police. So I think we need to do a lot more work to get people reporting from schools, for example, and making sure people are reporting incidents when they spot somebody who might be vulnerable to FGM, for example. There is a lot of work done by the police, what they call the Public Protection Unit, So they do a lot of work around protecting vulnerable people. And if somebody has identified to them as being vulnerable, what support are they putting in place to make sure that they are being kept safe? And there's a lot of work there done with partners to keep the victim safe, and also look at what interventions need to be done with the perpetrator or with the families, or what whoever's causing that abuse. There's a lot of work being done, but absolutely there's always more we need to do. As I said before, we need more resource. There was a huge demand on police and other local authorities and our partners, so we absolutely need to get more resource to help us do some of that work. But it's definitely not something we want to rest on our laurels. Definitely lots more we can do.
And I completely agree when you say that there's always work to be done, especially with developing victim care services like Savera. Now, obviously, Savera needs to be a sustainable project. It needs to be able to last many, many years, but there's always work that needs to be done alongside it. So how do you intend to support Savera UK in the future?
So there's lots of different ways. Obviously, my funding that I get from the Ministry of Justice, I'm very keen to ask that funding is made more sustainable, because then if I am able to commission services like Savera, I can provide them a more sustainable funding source, rather than at the minute it can happen, you only get kind of a grant every year. So that's a real challenge, making sure that we get sustainable funding out for organisations like Savera is something I'm really keen to try and champion. I think as well, taking part in events like we've just had this evening, where I want to support the work that Savera are doing to challenge some of the myths around harmful practices, to help raise awareness of the work they're doing, and help to encourage victims to come forward and engage with their services. Anything I could do to try and promote that work, and let them know that they will be supported and they'll be listened to, and they'll get the right support from the police as well. I think it's really important that I kind of help to champion that work as well.
In your opinion, what more can be done to educate young people on harmful practices?
I think Savera already do a good amount of work on this. They're really committed to working with schools, working with young people like yourselves to try and talk about some of these issues, support them to kind of challenge some of the things they might be seeing within their communities. So I think that is fundamentally key. I do think we probably want to do more work with schools to try and broaden that out, so it isn't just targeting particular communities, but that actually all young people understand it and can challenge it when they see it, even if it might not be something that directly affects them. There is a real challenge, I think, around schools are under a lot of pressure to educate on a huge range of issues. So I think we need to look at that broad package of support around healthy relationships, education, what's appropriate, what's not, and actually using things like Ofsted to support schools to make it a priority, so they can do that work with partners like Savera to actually really get to the spend time really discussing it and giving students a chance to understand the issues.
Now, I'm just going to give a slightly different example. So obviously today we've seen that Ofsted have released that actually sexual assault and sexual abuse has been so normalised in schools, and that schools actually have a duty to be trying to challenge these beliefs and sort of this behaviour. Now, obviously, young people are so important they're going to be so important in a lot of the decisions that you make as PCC. So how are you going to be allowing young people to be involved in these decisions, and how are you going to be enabling them to make their voices heard?
So as the PCC, I think I'm very conscious that I'm only one person and that I cannot possibly represent I won't be able to understand all the experiences of people across Merseyside. So I think one of the things I'm really keen to do is to get out and speak to other groups and speak to other communities to understand the kind of things that they might be experiencing, and that will help me to do my job better. So young people are obviously a really crucial part of that. So taking part in conversations like this is really useful, and getting an opportunity to hear from you, like we heard earlier, around some of the challenges that you're facing, some of the concerns you might have. I think having that two-way dialogue is really important. I also have a youth ambassador scheme, and I'll be relaunching that in the summer, hopefully not too distant future, to recruit some young members from Merseyside, from a diverse background. We want a real range of diversity within our young people who will help me inform the work that I'm doing, inform the decisions that I'm making. I will be in the process of developing my police and crime plan, which is my kind of priorities for the police and for partners across Merseyside, and I really want young people to be part of that. There is a specific strand around how we support young people and the voices that they have. So I think there's lots of work that I can do to make sure that young people's voices are kind of very much part of that decision-making structure. I also, so as PCC, I hold the police to account, and I will meet with the Chief Constable and the senior officers as to how they're doing and tackling person as part of that conversation, because they will ask questions and they will challenge the police around things that I might not think of, and I really want that voice to be there and be part of that decision-making process.
So you definitely agree then that young people are vital in the conversation. And I think that's something that the event tonight, our question time panel event, has obviously shown, is that young people will have a different take and they will have a different perspective on certain things. And actually, it's so vital that officials like yourself are engaging young people in these discussions, which obviously will be affecting our generations to come. And if we can sort of challenge these behaviours now, it could definitely prove for a much better and brighter future for us all.
Yeah. I don't know if it's worth saying as well, so I got involved in politics when I was a member of the Youth Parliament. So I was about 16. So I kind of got involved in politics being a young person and identifying concerns and issues that I had, and, you know, things that I wanted to campaign on. And that's kind of got me through into this kind of, I got involved in the Labour Party, and that's how I am here now. So it's also important, I think, for me in my position to think about who are the leaders of the future, who are the young people who might be me in a few years' time, and who want to go on to be police commissioner or be a councillor or be a member of parliament. You know, I think it's really important that actually I see myself as engaging young people, so hopefully they will see the opportunities that come from being involved and will want to go on and do it more in the future. And then we encourage that diversity within our leadership.
Yeah, that's definitely very gratifying, and definitely very nice to hear that obviously you would like to engage young people, especially in the Merseyside area, which is currently where you work. Elias, did you have any more questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, but she pretty much addressed it.
Yeah, so. Perfect. We'd just like to thank you so much for your time today, Emily. It's definitely been really helpful for us as well, just to understand how you aim to work within the Merseyside area as the new PC. And once again, congratulations on your election.